And chapter 3 is in the books.
And in the trash.
Well, it was almost in the trash. I had a little goof on this one, friends. I deleted our working version of the file in Descript, and you cannot get those back.
Nope. Luckily, though, I had already exported it, so we had the audio.
So it's a good thing we like it. But unlike other episodes, where we could make some fixes if we wanted, this one is set in stone.
Because I am not doing all of that work over again.
But I do love what we did with chapter 3. It was a great opportunity to create this corporate environment and play with some effects, but in a totally different way than our first 2 chapters.
Yeah. And while I've been honing my audio engineering skills, working on the math club for the past 4 years, you're new to all of this, and you had to go through a lot of iterations on those voice models. So since you handle the voice work, why don't you talk about that a little?
11 Labs is our voice modeling program. It's definitely an industry leader in this area, but how you use it is a skill that takes some time to get right. With 11 Labs, you can generate voices through text to voice and use a markup language to get the right emotion and inflection. But you also have to take your time selecting the right voice model. Obviously, the voices are different, but some of them are good for different things. For instance, in chapter 1, Samantha was a superstar. When I would capitalize a word or give her an inflection through an emote, that model did exactly what I wanted. But what I loved more than anything was the accents.
Well, I don't need to go out. And I don't want to go for a ride in the car.
The fact that I could get her to say out like a Canadian and ka like a Bostonian was enough for me to go back and rewrite that scene to make it come more alive.
Now, when it came to the narrator, we ultimately decided that the AI generated voice models just couldn't cut it.
Yeah, they do well for a few lines or a paragraph, but they start to fall apart if you let them go on for too long. And the narrator, he has to speak for long sections of the book, and he has to stay consistent.
Right. And since I have a background in drama and podcasting, and I speak all day as a teacher, we did a recording of me as the narrator to see if we could get a better result.
And I suppose I had a surprise for you after that.
Oh, you did? In a few hours, I got back a file to listen to with me doing the recording in a completely different voice.
Surprise! No, really. I thought I had explained to him before that we were going to be using AI. And in this case, we were using the other option available from 11 Labs. You can record an actual person's voice and then use the AI voice models as a sort of overlay. It's called the voice changer. It keeps all of the person's inflections and intonation, but changes their voice completely.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear the two side by side. Take a listen to this line from the opening of chapter 1. First, you can hear the line in my own voice, the way we recorded it. And then right after that, you can hear how it sounds with the narrator's voice as an AI overlay. Aiden sat on the second story of the bar, a sweating glass of something amber and unnecessary at his elbow.
Aiden sat on the second story of the bar, a sweating glass of something amber and unnecessary at his elbow.
And as you can hear, that second version sounds exactly like the first version in terms of how it's being read, but it's being read in the narrator's voice.
Yeah, so that was my idea for what to try next with the narrator.
And I think what I heard was, Noah, your voice is amazing. Narrate my book so there are more places on the internet for you to hear yourself talk. Yay!
You eventually decided that you liked it, though, right?
Well, to be honest, it took a little getting used to, but yes, after a bit, I started to like how the narrator sounded.
The narrator was the part that solidified the earliest to me. I love how the narrator sounds.
And it's funny, when I'm editing my other podcast, I think to myself, take this bit of me talking and move it to before this part that Pete says. But when I'm editing the chapters from the book now, I think things like, take this line from the narrator and do such and such. I don't think of the narrator as me while I'm working on it. There is a complete disconnect between him and me, and I just hear him now as someone else's voice, even though it's definitely my speech patterns and inflection underneath it.
It's an interesting process, but there's no doubt that without you, that narrator is not nearly as good. Now, in chapter 3, Evan was my star. Evan sounded like a nerdy founder of a company.
Because you really do love to model these characters after yourself.
Well, Evan is a genius.
Okay, well, I guess you don't model them entirely after yourself.
I loved when he was just starting out how nervous he sounded, and then he started to get it together.
This is when Evan Caldwell arrived on the scene. No, say it again, and this time mean it. This is when Evan Caldwell arrived on the scene.
Hey everyone, this is Noah from the future cutting in here while I'm editing this discussion to explain something, but mainly just to give Pete a hard time. You may have noticed that when I added sample lines from Samantha and the narrator, they were clean versions of their voices with no background sounds. But in Evan's sample, you can hear the audience noise behind him. And that's because Pete deleted our Descript project, and all I had to work with now was the exported audio with everything already combined together. Thanks, Pete. Now, back to our discussion. Yeah, that sounds great, and I agree with you that Evan came out really well. But then there was Bob. You guys have no idea how many Bob voices we tried. They just didn't sound right to either of us.
The guy is not heroic or evil or anything really strong that voice models do well.
Okay, but Evan isn't heroic or evil either.
I know. That is why I thought this was just not going to be a problem. I was like, oh, I found Evan so quickly. This is going to be easy. Nope. Just nope. So I had to go back to voice acting with Bob, and Bob was an overlay of my voice.
And that brings us to the moment where I had to force myself to say something that I'd been trying to avoid for some time.
Yeah. I think you were trying to be nice about a few of the lines that I created. My voice acting was just not good enough for some of these takes.
Oh, no, dude, I wasn't trying to be nice. I just figured I at least had to be polite or you'd kick me off the project.
Well, that may come to pass, but whatever the case, I had some work to do on my voice acting skills.
We're going to set up a Patreon, and if people send us enough, I'm sending him to voice acting school.
Yeah, there were a lot of bad takes, but now we have Bob, and I'm pretty happy with how he turned out.
And once we had Evan and Bob, I added echoes to their voices so it sounded like they were in a large auditorium.
Little details like that go a long way to make the scene.
Thanks. And I gotta say, after doing the sound editing on that pirate battle in Chapter 2, I thought this tech conference was gonna be a total piece of cake. But once I got rolling on it, I realized that there was a lot going on sound-wise in this tech presentation. Those echoes we just talked about, the drone flying in and out, all kinds of bleeps and bloops during Evan's presentation, not to mention the crowd getting more and more worked up and reacting to the whole thing as he went on about DocBox.
Well, it came out really well.
Well, good thing since you threw our working file away.
All right. I said I was sorry.
So anyway, let's talk about the story a little bit here. Our first 3 chapters have very different feels to them. First, we meet Aiden and Linda, and we get introduced to our problem. Then we meet Kayla and Lucian several centuries earlier. And now here we are just a few years back from the present day, seeing yet another AI platform that I assume is going to be a pretty integral part of our story somehow.
For sure. DocBox plays a huge role in the story. But what I like about this chapter is that instead of getting exposition about this technology, we just get to hear him pitch the company to his investors. You don't really need to know more about the company.
I assume we're going to hear more about this company and Evan at some point.
Yes, we are going to spend some time at DocBox, And our growing cast of characters will have some really good interactions there. But one way I intentionally shorten this chapter is by not explaining a lot of the details. In fact, there's a specific line in this chapter.
And for you who love to go through details, it's all out there for you on our websites.
That line replaced a whole lot of exposition with tons of gory details that I don't think anyone but me wanted to hear.
So, what about this whole history portion of the book? Are we done with that? Or are we going to continue alternating back and forth between the past and the present?
So the book really has 3 acts, and I'll talk about the first 2. In Act 1, we shift back and forth a lot as we build characters and pull people into the story. But then as we move into the second act, we really shift momentum and we focus more on the present. We're still going to shift perspectives a lot, but we're going to stop moving back and forth in time.
Well, this is interesting to me because of the story, but to be honest, it's even more interesting to me as an audio producer. Each of these chapters so far has had a totally different feel, from our disco club to our pirate battles to a corporate event.
Ladies and gentlemen, the founder of DocBox, Evan Caldwell.
So I get to approach each one in a completely different way.
And we're going to have a few more different feels as well. Most of the chapters should feel pretty different from each other.
So give us a little tease for chapter 4. What's next?
In chapter 4, we continue our story from chapter 1, and Aiden goes to meet Kayla. Now we get to meet her in the present day.
All right, everyone. We'll be back next time with that chapter, and then we'll see you back here afterwards for a bit of reflection.
See you soon.